Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video I'm gonna talk about how to start making money as a freelancer specializing on web scraping. Me personally started freelancing for about a year ago. Well, it was probably the last spring, and since that time I'm a top rated freelancer at Upwork. But don't look at this job success score because it's based on the private feedbacks that doesn't really reflect the real state of how it works. Basically, I have only 5-star reviews on my profile here, so that's just kind of some sort of an Upwork specific disaster. So I just want to say that I had quite a successful path within the last year, and basically at this particular moment I'm doing mostly web development and API development instead of web scraping, even though I'm still kind of doing some web scraping. But people often say that it's not really that easy to get into Upwork and start growing your client base and all this stuff. But for me personally, it was a really nice experience to actually start as a Python developer specializing exactly at web scraping, basically. So that's how I kind of get started with an Upwork. So in this kind of video, I just want to cover some of the most basic things regarding web scraping skills, techniques, and tools that you might have need to master as a web developer, as the Python developer, in order actually to get started your own career. So before we go to this kind of jobs posted at either at Upwork or at Fiverr, I would like to cover the tools that are the most common use cases when we talk about regarding the web scraping. So the very basic kind of pair to kickstart off, the best ever pair to kickstart off, to my own opinion, is actually requests plus BeautifulSoup. So requests is needed to make outgoing HTTP requests, and it's literally what they claim it to be. It's HTTP for humans, absolutely. So it's really built for human beings, yeah, not for the robots or for the computers. So it's extremely easy to use, really nice documentation here covering every single possible thing that you would ever like to want with HTTP requests. You can specify the headers, specify the proxies, creating custom proxy rotation and all this stuff. So not a high-level frameworks like a Scrapy. While Scrapy is a high-level framework, and we'll cover this a little bit later on. So requests and BeautifulSoup are completely separate from each other. And that's why basically, while during writing your own web scrapers, you can do completely everything on your own. So you can design the scrapers however you want. You can go object-oriented way, or you can go the functional programming, whatever you like. So it depends on the client you're working with. It depends on the job description, if this is a one-time scraper or multiple cases use, or the scraper that is supposed to be used multiple times. Like some companies have some scrapers running on their servers just to update some sort of reasonable data for their usage, personal, in their company, whatever. So in any case, these requests are really user friendly and easy to kickstart with. And well, I don't know, unfortunately I started with Scrapy back in those days, last spring, and my very first job at Upwork was actually related to Scrapy. And starting with Scrapy is really a bad idea, because you already facing you're coming into the spaceship while you don't even know how to handle a single skateboard. So first it's better to learn how to drive the skateboard and then just go into that sort of a spaceship. So when I started with Scrapy directly, it was really difficult to understand the very basics regarding the web scraping in general, and didn't really understand all those tiny little details back in those days. So requests and BeautifulSoup are really the use cases for those who really are just kind of beginners and want to get started with web scraping as their professional specialty. And that's the reason why requests and BeautifulSoup are covered in so many ways, in so different cross references on my particular YouTube channel. So you will find either the request crash course, some proxy rotation crash course, and also how to handle with the CSV, how to handle CSV files when you want to write your scraper output to some sort of a storage like CSV or JSON file or whatever. Also, there are numerous one-time scrapers on this channel where you can actually see how the scraper development from scratch is actually going on. So there are both object-oriented and the functional programming examples of creating web scrapers. Also, scraping various sources like infinite scrolls, pagination, and all the various stuff. So really, kind of lots of interesting thing to consider if you really want to pick up a web scraping as your specialty to start making money on. So that's kind of it. And also, before actually we'll go to Scrapy framework, I just want to say that there is quite a tricky pairing in this sort of topics. I mean, like BeautifulSoup and request versus Scrapy, and also hourly paid jobs versus fixed price jobs. So this kind of two pairs are very similar. You know, like it often happens that if you're going for hourly paid jobs, they usually involve some Scrapy, because you know, like if a company wants to hire you for an hourly paid job, the amount of hourly rate doesn't matter in this case. But if they want to hire you to just create or maintain already existing scrapers, yeah, in that case, the most usual case for that situation is basically when they already have some Scrapy based spiders in their system. So you either need to modify them or to improve them or to make them solving some captchas or whatever. Just it often, it's just kind of statistics. So at least to my particular experience, so Scrapy is more used by the companies that really want like to have like an army of scrapers just scraping news or some sort of a data or whatever, just scraping data all the time. So like from early morning to deep night, and from deep evening to the very early morning. So just all along the way, all the day long, they are scraping, and so on. And so they would definitely need someone, a guy, to handle that scrapers, to manage them, to repair them if they're broken and stuff like that. So that's quite often use case for the Scrapy. So it usually, it's not always the case, but in most cases it usually correlates to somewhat an hourly paid job, and that's just to bear in mind. And when we're talking about requests in BeautifulSoup, in most cases, not all of the cases of course, but in most cases, it's all about when it's not a company, but it's just a single client who wants to scrape some not really that big amount of data for his personal use, basically. So say he wants, I don't know, to scrape some Reddit posts from subreddit of someone, a blogger or whatever, or he wants just to have the list of items from the e-commerce site, or he needs just, I don't know, whatever data for personal use, like addresses, emails, contacts, just whatever kind of information. Well, maybe he's trying to buy a car, so he wants the list of cars with a comparison of the prices, features, like deliveries and all this stuff. So there might be many use cases, but in general, that sort of scrapers are those that I used to call them like a one-time scrapers, because it's one-time scraper is a one-time code. So you just write a Python script, and the reason behind that is it need to scrape data usually only once. So once the data is scraped, you've got a CSV file, so you don't need that code anymore. And basically those guys who are not the companies, who are just a private clients who just want, they don't care about programming, they don't care about the scraper itself. All they want is actually called as a data mining. So data mining is all about like basically selling data files that you've scraped using your scrapers. So these are kind of two different scenarios. So like the first scenario, when you're getting paid basically for coding, in cases with the Scrapy framework, it's more about like you're actually getting paid for coding the scraper, repairing it, or something like that. But when it comes to BeautifulSoup and requests, it's more often like they just want the data. They don't care about the code, and they don't even want to run the code on their local system. And that's actually why it's always so many services arising that allows you to run your web scrapers in the cloud or deploy your scrapers. So just not to expose your own IP address in public for some reason if needed, and so on. So that's kind of it. So I hope now you understand why am I emphasizing on these pairs like request and BeautifulSoup versus Scrapy on the one hand, and fixed price versus hourly paid on the other hand. So as far as I hope this is kind of a little bit of clear stuff, let's move on to the some sort of a short of overview regarding the Scrapy framework. Even though I've already kind of covered the most common use cases for the Scrapy framework, let me just also provide you a few notes regarding how it works itself. So it's kind of all in one high level bundle of web scraping tools and everything you would ever basically want to have in your scraping environment. But I personally don't really like that high level frameworks. Like if I were to choose between Python Flask and Django, I would definitely use Flask, just because it's not really that high level as Django. So in Flask you can simply make everything on your own how you want. You can manage literally anything you want there. Well, maybe not really that anything, but at least that's true compared to the Django. And in Scrapy, they've already implemented so many various concepts that are kind of best practices. But best practices are not always the best. So they are the best only in those cases if they really fit those needs where they're used. But if that's not really that true, you can't really say that. But let me just quickly demonstrate what kind of parts does Scrapy consists of. So all this information can be basically extracted from the documentation, but let me just tell you that I'll try to keep the things simple. So Scrapy consists of numerous middlewares. So the first and the very basic, it has a core element, and that core element is actually managing some middlewares around it. So the very first and basic middleware for Scrapy is the downloader middleware. So by saying that, so that means that you can just take away the existing, the casual, the standard Scrapy downloader middleware, and say replace it with somewhat like a crawler API stuff that allows you to handle automatic proxy rotation with numerous features like user agent spoofing and so on. So just by changing the single middleware. So in terms of coding, it's kind of like you just specify a couple of parameters within the inner fields in your Scrapy Spider class, and that's kind of it. So you just provide the authentication token to run that crawler API, and after you just kind of type in a couple line of codes and paying $25 per month, you have already for about 150,000 of outgoing HTTP requests for your web scraping purposes, and they have various plans, but I'm not really promoting that. I'm just telling you how easy that can be to implement, say, proxy rotation when you're dealing with Scrapy. So say if you're doing if you want the proxy rotation in requests and BeautifulSoup, in that case you'll need to do that all on your own, starting from answering the question on where to get your on where to get the fresh proxy list that would be working and that would be decent with a normal kind of response time, so it won't be time outed for that long time, etc. So that's kind of one thing. And in request in BeautifulSoup, it takes you a really long time to, well, if you, at least if you've never done that before, to implement that, it takes quite a bit of time. Well, in Scrapy you can just specify only the couple lines of codes in the settings of the spider itself, and that the things are getting are getting okay, you understand me, guys. So that's kind of one of the examples. Also, the same is applicable to, say, handling cookies and sessions, or regarding the headers. So Scrapy has how would that called, user agent middleware or headers middleware. Don't really remember. Okay, spider middleware, downloader. Well, I don't exactly remember how is that called, but there are entire modules to just in one row just to change the logic of spoofing headers, of handling cookies and sessions and so on. So that's there really kind of many opportunities out there. One of the most differences between Scrapy and Request plus BeautifulSoup is probably that Scrapy allows you quite easily to make asynchronous HTTP requests, because it's built using the Twisted, it's the name, it's called Twisted library. It's kind of like request, but it supports threading, so you can go concurrent requests using Scrapy in quite easy way. Again, just specify a couple of settings within your spider. Also, you can handle the download delays between requests. Also, Scrapy provides you some sort of a automatic changing some automatic random changing of the delay between the requests in order to trick the target server you're scraping data from, so that it would think like it's a user, not the scraper, but like it's a user. So like user don't ever make HTTP requests per 1 second or per 2 seconds, or so he can make just request, and then he can wait for a while drinking some coffee, and then he goes to another page, and then he goes on further on and so on. So Scrapy at some point is trying to mimic that sort of user behavior. So and there is also lots of implicit tricks that are not really seen that on the surface, but they really are there, and that's the reason why it's really cool for when you need some heavy crawling, like when you're crawling like thousands, hundreds of thousands of pages every day, like if you need to extract tons of data, and if you really want to do that just every single day, well, in that case Scrapy is really like your use case. So if just trying to keep the thing simple and trying to avoid some technical language in order to describe this, so the difference between Request plus BeautifulSoup and Scrapy is almost the same like the difference between the skateboard and the spaceship. So you know, like when you have a spaceship, it's a Scrapy, you can fly to another planet and you just go into outer space. You have systems to automate your daily lifetime. I don't know, just supports your health. It does everything. It feeds you. It's healing you. It's everything. It's the entire life cycle within the spaceship. It's like kind of a single ecosystem environment there. While the skateboard is, you know, like you can go from your home to someone another homes, so like that. So it's not really that far. So it's, you know, like just compare the skateboard and the spaceship, and that's pretty basic, or at least in my personal opinion. And one last thing I'd like to say regarding the Scrapy, that it has one little nice kind of thing that I personally consider to be really useful, is you're not forced to use all the possibilities of Scrapy. So it's so big and it's so complicated, but you can use just those parts of it that you're interested in. Say you just want to make asynchronous requests, but you don't really want the built-in Scrapy selectors. Well, you're free to just create a basic spider you inherited from the basic spider class, or I don't remember exactly how that called. And then when it comes to data extraction, you can use BeautifulSoup if you know that, and that's actually the case that I use in probably most of my projects at my full-time job. So it's really okay if you're making requests with the Scrapy and then you just parse in the response using the casual BeautifulSoup, and you don't really need to use the built-in CSV exporters or whatever else exporters. So you're free to if you don't want to automate somewhat a process, you are free to implement everything on your own. So you can just be selective regarding Scrapy, so you can just pick up only those features out of it that you actually need in order to complete your job. And here we've come to the the most important part, basically. So it's you don't really have to be tied up to whatever framework or library or something else. All those are just simply the tools to solve tasks. So you really have to be kind of task driven, because like you have a task, you need to find a solution to make it like the best of you can I don't know, like you just need to find the solution, and that's it. And when you realize that when you get an idea in your head of somehow you can do that, then you're starting to picking up some tools in order to achieve your goal. And in that case, you can use either BeautifulSoup and Request, or Scrapy, or both, or you can even use Request within the Scrapy itself. I know this sounds weird, but that's also might have been the case. So just bearing that in mind as well. Okay, and as far as we've kind of finished our Request plus BeautifulSoup versus Scrapy comparison, now it's time to go for how actually to get a job as a web developer, as a Python developer specializing at web scraping. So just close the Scrapy documentation here. So here we have, I'd like to introduce the two sites I had experience with. It's the Fiverr and the Upwork. I don't want to promote none of them, because basically I don't like both. I don't like Upwork for numerous reasons, like they taken away 10% of my job success rate for nothing, basically, and I was really angry when that happened. That I just write to the support and they just kind of didn't want to explain me much. They just say like, you got a bad private feedback, and that's it. And when I ask my clients, like, guys, did you give me a bad private feedback? Like, no, we didn't. So why on earth that happened? So, I don't really like corporations in general and Upwork in particular, but still, for now on, it feeds me. So I have to kind of work using it. Well, even though I'm trying to get away from that one day, that's why I'm doing these YouTube videos. I'm trying to looking for my clients as freelancer outside Upwork. So just trying to looking for them everywhere. So I hope one day I will be able to get rid of Upwork, but for now, unfortunately, I'm tied up to it. But that's not a big deal. So there's kind of two scenarios regarding getting paid as a developer. So those approaches are fixed price and hourly paid. And let me just quickly discuss the pros and cons regarding these two approaches. So it's really difficult to compare them, and it's not like first you need to start with say fixed price, and then when you get experience move into the hourly paid. In my case, this was absolutely on the contrary. So I had no experience in Request and BeautifulSoup at that time at all. I just had a job offer. That was an accident. That was an accident, basically. But that happened. That I did get a job offer, and I didn't have experience in web scraping like almost at all at that time. And I needed to be proficient in Scrapy in the next day. So this day I got a job offer, and the next day I had to already start writing scrapers, writing Scrapy spiders. So that was actually my story, that how the things were going on that time. So I was really overwhelmed when I needed to pick up all the documentation regarding the Scrapy framework just for one single night. That was a sleepless night, and I was completely exhausted in the morning. But still actually the next day I started writing some code and even did succeed creating a spider while I could hardly understand how it works basically and why it works. It just when it just did scrape something, I could hardly understand what's going on under the hood. So that's kind of not the really best ever approach. But you know, like if I even now I'm not taking me personally, I'm not taking fixed price web scraping jobs because you know, like I'm afraid to fail that, believe it or not. Yeah, even though I'm making all those YouTube tutorials regarding web scraping, and someone on the internet told me that my web scraping tutorials are better than anybody else's out there. Well, I don't know, it's hard to compare. I didn't see much other web scraping tutorials, but still, you know, like me like telling about myself, like I know something regarding web scraping. Still, even still, I'm afraid to go for free. I'm afraid to go for fixed price web scraping jobs. And if I have some Upwork job offers based fixed price based, I just decline them because I don't really want that's how I can low my rating there, and for nothing basically, and that my profile would go down, and that's not the good scenario at all. Well, but on the other hand, well, you know, like I definitely wouldn't go for fixed price at Upwork, because you know, like Upwork is all about hourly paid. So if you're at Upwork, even if you have absolutely clear whitelist profile with no jobs, no experience, basically literally nothing there, even that in that case you can just set up $5 per hour. That's the minimal amount of hourly rate. You can just set those $5 per hour like I did in the last spring, and you know, believe it or not, you will start getting some offers, because you know, like if you know something regarding Python, yeah, if you know something regarding web development, if you ever actually completed at least one web scraper that actually works and produces a decent CSV output or JSON or whatever, and in that case you already can be absolutely sure that you're ready to post to create your profile and set up the $5 per hour rate. And just you don't have to waste your they call this connects. You have to buy connects to being able to apply jobs at Upwork. That's another disaster, absolutely complete disaster, because it's so weird. You're going to the freelancing platform, so you're supposed to make money, but instead you have to just pay money to being able only to apply to some of the jobs without any guarantees that you will actually get hired. So you know, like to my own opinion, it's not the case. So what you can do is actually just create that profile, set up the $5 per hour rate, and just wait for incoming offers. Well, this might have taken for, you know, like a couple of months, but still it's better than just you know, like if you start even if you buy those damn connects and spend like $10 to buy like a bunch of those connects, and you start trying to apply the jobs with a empty profile, well, probably the most cases you will be rejected just because you're having an empty profile. That's it. So nobody cares, like even if you're Bill Gates, you know, like they don't care. They just see that you have an empty profile, and that's kind of it. So that's definitely not the case. So you know, like if you really want the Upwork, it's really good just to set up that $5 per hour rate and just wait until you get the very first job offer. Then you have to succeed that, and it would be far better if you will have an hourly paid instead of fixed price, and you just have to wait a little bit, and the hourly paid would definitely and an hourly paid job offer would definitely appear. Just believe me, that would happen. So that's regarding the Upwork. And another option, which you know, like I personally didn't. I had a couple of orders at Fiverr, but those were not really related to web scraping, to be honest. Yeah, like so basically, I don't have a Fiverr web scraping experience. So I know that lots of guys doing web scraping here are their gigs. So if you have a look at the prices, so they take in not really that much money per scraper basically. Well, in most cases they don't even take money for providing you a scraper code. Maybe they just there are many cases where they just selling the data that was scraped by their scrapers. So that they are not selling the code, but instead they are just selling the data. And that also might be the case for the beginners. Well, at least if you want to try your skills, if you just want to taste the experience of the real freelancing out there. So that also might be the case. I don't want to either encourage you or discourage you regarding this stuff. It's all opinion based. It's all on your own. So it's basically you to choose. So how to go there. But there is one little nice thing regarding Fiverr actually, that like it's not if you start making money on that, it would definitely ask you for your bank account credentials and all this stuff. But if you say make a $5 or $10 there just to gain an experience, they don't care about who you are, where you're from, and stuff like that. So if something goes wrong, you can just delete your account and start a new one and try again and again, and that's pretty. So maybe in that case you won't get paid, but that's not a big deal. So how much money I made on Fiverr? Probably $15, something like that. And I couldn't even withdraw those $15 because the minimal withdrawal minimum at Fiverr is $20. So that's the reason why my $15 are still at Fiverr, and I don't believe that I would ever get them out of there. So that's kind of it. Okay guys, I hope I did provide you some reasonable information regarding web scraping tools, regarding the job types overview, the platforms where you can get started and stuff like that. So for those of you who has been following my channel for quite a bit of time, and at least maybe not followed, but at least understands what's going on in those one-time scrapers series or web scraping gunfu tutorials or stuff like that. So if you're familiar with what's going on there, then I can say that you're definitely ready to start your own freelancing career as Python developers specializing at web scraping. So this is kind of it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this and found some decent information for you guys, and this is it from my side. So basically until next time, and take care.